Welcome to Unboxing What Matters, a podcast brought to you by Daraz. In each episode, we will unpack the opinions, topics, and big ideas that are inspiring and changing our world today. I am your host, Mimi Nicklin. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to Unboxing What Matters. Today we are going to have a conversation all around innovation, creativity and where the world is going in the years that have passed. Today I am with Meijboom and Rakhil Fernando, both managing directors here in Sri Lanka. Meijboom, managing director of Heineken, and Rakhil, managing director of Daraz, Sri Lanka. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah.
Very exciting to have this conversation with two people from such different worlds, and yet, as we heard in our pre-discussion, so much sort of shared passion, shared context of where the world is going. Let's start by talking about leadership and teams. Maud, I'm going to start with you. You've been a marketer for a very long time, right?
Yes.
This is your passion, right? Let's talk about teams.
Yeah.
Maybe how that shifted in the last few years, because it has, right? We've gone from sort of very in office to very hybrid. We've gone from quite local to very global. Lots going on out there. How has marketing changed from a leadership point of view, from a team point of view in the last few years? What are you seeing?
Yeah, if you think there's always two questions in there, because leadership change. If I answer that part first, I think leadership is becoming much more conscious and much more inclusive. Whereas in the past, and I'm working at a beer company, which was considered quite masculine, there is now really the proven effort that if you have mixed teams, if you have diverse teams, not only men and women, but also from different backgrounds, different paths of life, that in the end you perform better. And then if you look at it from a marketing perspective, I think in marketing it is crucial to be obsessed with your consumer. And if you look back in the days, we might even in Heineken had quite a similar profile, all went to the good universities, had seen the world. And if you look at how you really create great work is by being obsessed with consumers and not only serving them what you think is right, so listening to consumers, but also opening that perspective. So for me in marketing it's crucial to have very diverse teams and stimulating inclusion, diversity, and that everyone has a seat at the table. And you have to listen as a leader. You have to listen to the people and what they bring to you, and that is in marketing, but also in other functions in our company.
I want to come back to D&I later in this conversation because I think it's a fascinating topic, particularly in beer, as you said. Moving from what was probably at one point a very masculine drink to where we are today. So I'm going to come back to that.
Sure.
But from a team point of view and from a marketer's point of view, are marketers changing? The people that are in marketing? So you're talking about diversity, different people. How are you seeing that shift? The young people, the teams you're seeing, are they different today? Is marketing changing?
Well, I think in the end, why did I become a marketer? Because I love to create things, and that you think of things like, and in beverages, could we create this or that or so and so, and then to go to the supermarket and to see that on shelf is brilliant. That's why I love FMCG. It goes fast, it's innovative, etc. But I think the way to do marketing is changing. Back in the days, everyone, like our parents, what did they do? They watched the same TV network, and the next day everyone was talking over the coffee machine, like, oh, did you see that show? Yeah. Now you need to have people that are able to create consumer pull, and not only like who talks TV. I don't even have a TV, but understand technology and the acceleration and then the pace, and be a bit of a IT obsessed, digital transformation obsessed as well.
Does a brand like Heineken, it's an alcohol industry, how much of sort of your customer conversion happens through sort of digital means versus in front of a shelf or behind a bar? Right about.
In the end, what is the biggest persuasion is still word of mouth. So recommendation from a friend or from a bartender is still the number one driver. But indeed, conversion just from watching TV and sending stuff to people, that's not it. That builds your basic hygiene factor, maybe some functional messaging, etc.
Yeah.
But for a consumer nowadays, it's super important one, and especially if you talk Gen Z. What does a brand stand for? What is the purpose? Does it bring it to life? And is it not just, oh yeah, they put a sticker on it and it's like nice to say that because that's what you're supposed to say, but are you really walking the talk? Are you bringing that purpose to life? And then from just sending, can I experience the brand? Do I indeed also see, okay, they're making sustainable packaging. Actually, they have reduced their amount of glass or amount of cardboard in the packaging by so and so, or indeed by buying this, I'm contributing to that, this and that. People really want to see those tangible things. So almost purpose is now a word that everyone uses.
That's
but I say every brand has a purpose. Is the reason why you're alive. But that purpose has to gel with your target audience.
Let's talk about that in e-com, because how do you build purpose in the real world for a brand that lives in the digital world? Big question, no pressure.
I think for a business like ours, it's service standards, correct? I think it's at the end of the day, but what we really want to how much we push the brand or how much sort of amazing creative and advertising and all that kind of stuff that we do, if the service levels don't sort of match that, that's just sunk money. So, we really look at our investments more and more disproportionately getting invested more into improving our service levels and making sure that that's actually perfect or as perfect as we can get it before we actually double down on marketing and getting the message out there. I think in Heineken's case, if your the first thing you need to make sure is your beer tastes good, correct?
Exactly.
Before anything else. So for us, it's really making sure that we come through on our service levels, and that is which is the hardest part of the equation.
I mean, so fundamentally we're talking about brand experience, right? Whether it's the taste of a beer or the speed that you're packaging or your parcel gets delivered, we're talking about evolution of brand experience. And I would think now it's higher than ever. I mean, we're quite a demanding lot out there.
Yeah,
right?
and I think also it's expectations are not localized, correct? So you compare your experience here with what the global standard is.
Exactly.
So you also now have to compete and not compete, but base your business based on sort of very high expectations and demands of customers.
Let's talk a little bit about that sort of localization part, because here in Sri Lanka, there are not, let's be honest, there are not hundreds of beers to choose from. When you leave Sri Lanka and go abroad, I'm always really surprised when you go to a bar. I'm like, oh gosh, there's a lot of beers to choose from in other cities around the world. How does that change consumer expectation of your brand here when there's actually a smaller competitive set? Does that make it harder or easier?
Yeah, because technically the market in Sri Lanka, and then it's also for the international audience nice to know that Sri Lanka is a market on its own, and it is very different from all the other markets in the world. Sri Lankans love alcohol, but they drink a lot of spirits, and it is high alcohol content, and not all, your premium brands, but it's also a lot of homebrew. Let's call it like that. And the beer consumption per capita, so per person, is one of the lowest in the world.
Really?
Only 6 liters. If you compare that to the Netherlands, where I come from, it is about 76. Kiwis drink 64. Australians drink a little bit more, and then Eastern Europe, they are very high. But it's very low. So beer has also then a quirk that the majority of the beer is 8.8% strong beer. And that is 85% of the sales is that strong beer. So that is where you, as an international investor, you come in and say, hey, globally, palates are changing. It is about easy drinking. We call it sessionable. But people are also saying, hey, there's craft beer. There's something nice that I can explore, or a mix. Or in America, you have the seltzers, you have ciders. Here, that is not the case yet. But I believe with a population of 22 million people, and over 50% of the people are under 30 years old, and everyone has a mobile phone. That is gonna change. Maybe not for all, the legal drinking age adults yet, but there is the top of the iceberg that says, hey, I want to try different, I want to drink different, and I want to drink better.
Do you think that sort of the way beer is consumed in markets like ours, and let's say looking at other markets, does it a lot have to do with sort of the socio-economic makeup of a country, or not really? Because if you look at countries similar, African countries, maybe, very different.
Yeah, if I take it closer to home, a market like Laos, for example, how people drink there is together. Men and women, after work, they go to a place, there's live music, they sing, they share a big bottle of 4 or 5% beer, and it is very inclusive. And here in Sri Lanka, beer consumption is still very masculine. Right. Also, that has to do a bit maybe with the laws of the country, where women by law are not allowed to buy and sell.
But is that practiced? Oh, enforced? Sorry.
It is the law. If you go into Colombo, no one will stop you. But there are certain markets of course I go on a lot of market visits myself throughout the country, and they always say, hey, and maybe it's because I'm like a blonde lady shopping then, but there is always that surprise. And you see on shopper behavior, you hardly see any women there. If you go to a supermarket in Colombo that allows to sell, is allowed to sell beer, wine, there you see women. So it depends a bit on urbanization, non-urban. It does, but it is.
And Rakhil, do you think Sri Lanka is becoming more globally open? I mean, I was just touching there on sort of the impact of seeing things and trends abroad and that type of thing. Do you feel, as a leader in this market, that Sri Lanka is changing, and particularly fast in the last few years? Or is it still feeling like it did when you grew up? I mean, not literally, but how much has that changed? How speedy is that change?
I think it's changing in a global setting, or let's say the globalization of sort of expectations of people. I think that's changing. I think there's a lot of cultural things, I think, in the country that are probably becoming more internal versus global. The nationalization of mentalities and things like that. So, are people friendly to foreign companies in Sri Lanka the way they were before? For example, some of those things shift, correct, depending on sort of the situation in the country at any one time. But I think the consumer's expectations are definitely becoming, let's say, more to a global standard and global expectation, correct? So in that sense, who offers that service or who offers the product, people's tastes differ, I think, with times. But I think the expectation of that service or that product is very much becoming more and more demanding.
And from a brand appetite point of view, so global brands like a Heineken or in any category, you think that's changing? Or people quite happy with their local brands that they know well?
I think Sri Lanka is one of those countries where, for a very long time, it always had a very strong and quite mature local brands. I think Sri Lanka was, for example, in the 90s and 80s, were very sort of well established, for example, in the food production. Like if you look at markets like South India and stuff, they look at Sri Lanka as examples of what local markets like Rakhil used to carry for like sausages, high standard, high quality food production. So I think local brands there have done a good job of creating very global standard products. But now I think simply with exposure, social media, just also trend-driven consumer behavior and consumption behavior, you also want more, different things, new things that are trendy, what influencers are using around the world. So I think with that, there is that sort of want of more international consumer products and brands, and what's hot, what's trendy, and stuff like that.
And people follow it. If I look at Indeed, do they follow social media? For sure. Are people on TikTok? Yes. So they see what's happening out there. And look at what COVID did in Sri Lanka. Before there was almost no online sales of retail products, and look at you where you are now. But also the supermarket sales from nothing to now quite substantial and still opportunities for growth.
And everything now, I think soon they'll soon start allowing alcohol online ordering and stuff like that. So you're seeing those shifts happening.
Yeah, and if you then take it to China, where everything is done online, no one visits the supermarket anymore, and then it gets delivered either to your work. Everything is online. So I think Sri Lanka still has a long way to go, but there is a portion of the population that is very much open. I think the economic crisis is giving opportunities, but also providing challenges. That's why it might take a little bit longer. But I think the adventurous entrepreneurs will always find a market for innovative thoughts, because people here don't have their eyes closed, certainly not.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about creativity in that space, because when you've got a country that is so open, there is so much opportunity, and as you're saying, people are watching this content online. I mean, Heineken, the majority, or in fact all of the communication that a consumer in Sri Lanka is going to absorb is going to be a global piece of Heineken communication. Heineken is a brand that has, I can just remember their ads forever. It's just, they just make amazing ads. Even in COVID, I remember in COVID, some of the most shared ads were Heineken. They were just hilarious, right? So let's talk a little bit about how did that happen? How did Heineken, go from just being a beer brand to being a beer brand that is so entertaining and so clearly focused on creating stories?
Well, I think it starts, you have to go back quite a bit, but not the founding father, but his grandson, Freddie Heineken, was the man said, if I want to make this the most international beer, it has to travel. So he was the one that brought it to the States. He was afraid of flying, but he said, okay, I'll go anyway, visit every bar, and say, have you got Heineken, have you got Heineken? So create that consumer pool. But he also made the famous statement, and he said, I don't sell beer, I sell enjoyment. And
well done, Freddie. That's a good line.
Yeah, and that is still up to today the purpose of Heineken, to create the joy of true togetherness and then inspire a better world. There is also a bit of social responsibility in it. But he said, if I wouldn't have become a brewer, I would have been a marketeer. So he was one of the first guys that said, hey, experiences are good, so global sponsorships. He was the one that in the Heineken logo, the letter E was always flat, but he said, I have to tilt it. It's now a smiling E. So it's like these little quirks. And then he said, with Heineken we create that magic, that wow. And how did he do it? To listen very much what is the topical at the moment, what is the zeitgeist. And I think brands that do that always get that consumer insight twisted, that common belief into, turn it around, and that makes people smile. Why is Michael McIntyre such a successful comedian? He's a brilliant observer, and then exaggerates it at the stage, and it's just hilarious. So capturing that zeitgeist, the insight, and flipping it on its head, and turning that into a fresh perspective is what Heineken always does.
But how do you do that? Like, if you can answer this question, you're going to answer like every marketing director's question, right? How do you do that? Because we have less money and less time than we've ever had in marketing in history. And yet you're absolutely right. We're expected as marketers to know exactly what's going on the pulse, work out what the insight is, transition it into the brand, transform it, create it, and launch it in a TikTok moment.
Yeah.
Like, how do we do this?
Yeah, you have to, it is working at speed. You have to be very swift, so you have to have a very good process. And in our case, we work with brilliant agencies as well. And we have also got the ability, and we do it via a sub-organization called Le Pub, that really creates that topical content. So there is a lot of...
That's an in-house agency.
It is, and they create all the topical content for all over the world. It is with Publicis, our partnership. And that is like, okay, if it is Black Friday, they will think of something, flip it on its head. But in COVID, when people, at least I did it, everyone was in lockdown. The only way to get out was to either walk your dog or exercise.
Amazing.
So people started making all kinds of excuses to say, no, I'm going to exercise just to get outside. And Heineken said, hey, of course, how do you then connect? And that was connecting over putting the garbage out or putting walking the dog. And then, by the way, I've got 2 beers, so creating that connect. And it is something that we all experience, but then being super fast in translating that into something that is visually appealing and has that clever wit with the core of your brand's DNA at the heart. Because I can be topical about anything, but if it doesn't match the brand DNA, it doesn't work. So if I all of a sudden become very formal and very, then they say, Heineken, nice and topical, but it's not relevant. Then it's not meaningful to people.
Is Sri Lanka a unique market for Heineken in regards to not being able to advertise?
Yes, it's one of, we call it indeed dark markets, where because of legislation you cannot advertise, but there are more markets in the world where you have certain limitations. For example, in Malaysia you can only advertise into English or Chinese media titles.
Right.
But you can go online, but then it always says, okay, if you are of a certain religion, then this content is not meant for you. So people can then opt out. So using digital is very targeted way of approaching, and it always having warnings like if you are this or that. Yeah. Another one that we strictly adhere to is of course legal drinking age, and that differs per market as well. In Thailand, there are certain media channels that you can use, can't use, but Sri Lanka is unique in that it is totally dark. I cannot even give a pen to a customer and say, here, sign the contract.
So how do you handle that as a marketer? I mean, how do you market a brand without any marketing?
Yeah, that is, then it really comes to back to basics. What you said, your product has to be very good. So the taste experience has to be fantastic, how the packaging looks has to be fantastic. And then if you talk about the Heineken brand specifically, we have something unique in that it is, there's no additives. There's no rice, no corn, no sugar. And we say it's a single malt of beers because it's 100% pure malt. So you have a unique selling point. You can say that on the bottle.
Yeah.
But if you want to break through, you have to be available in the outlet. So making sure that your product is with the right packaging format in those outlets. And what you can do is, of course, you can put it on the menu. So it has to be on the menu at the right price. And then, of course, the bartender is also, if you go to an outlet to say, what shall we drink? Oh, have you tried a new Heineken, or have you tried this, or have you tried that wine? You're very likely to go with the recommendation But it is your basics, distribution, right pack, right price.
4 Ps of the olden days.
And what is allowed here is international advertising. So our global sponsorship platforms, Formula 1, Champions League, if people watch that, they will see, because that is just the global contract. So they have heard about Heineken, which is good. That is a benefit. They know it's international because they see it if they watch international things. And then when you're here, it needs to look and taste good.
So let's talk a little bit about creativity, Rakhil. I know you're extremely passionate about creativity, content, telling stories. I've seen your recent Christmas ad. It's brilliant. It's completely engaging. You don't often get that from an e-commerce brand. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do by telling these stories? What's your vision for creativity?
I think for us it's, we put out a lot of content all the time. Right? It's also, our own content has to stand apart from our other content. So we just try to almost just push the edge a bit. Especially marketing in Sri Lanka is relatively conservative, and you usually play the safe route. And we've decided that let's push the envelope when it comes to rich content around the events that we do, around the marketing that we push when it comes to social media, but also just the high production value. I think that's something also we really emphasize and invest into. But it's been a lot of fun. I think it costs a lot of money, and that's why it's prohibitive for a lot of people to do it as well. But I think for us, it is paying dividend when it comes to really also establishing the brand and people to understand what we stand for. And I think good production value and good storytelling also then helps the brand elevate among sort of the audience as well. So I mean, it's the team. I think the marketing team when I joined may have been 5-6 people.
And
Now it's about 70 people.
70 people.
So I think it's really we're also investing in those assets ourselves, with the studios and in-house content creation and stuff like that.
But how much of your media, of your advertising is individualized? Is IDDM is
Online, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit. So our conversion-based marketing is very individualized, and it really pushes, shows you products that you may have looked or what we call like lookalike products and stuff like that, or complementary products. So that's most of our conversion-based marketing. But I think now we're actually looking at, that's great, but we also want to really, so we're evolving into just trying to be a e-commerce company. So we do e-commerce in many ways, correct? We're doing online groceries, we're doing digital products like ticket sales for events. Now we're going double downing on fashion as well. So each of those verticals require a very different style of message. So now we're really going down into those subcategories and the different styles and the marketing that we have to do for that. And we actually write new brand playbooks for those different categories as well. So for that you really require, I think, more brand building versus conversion based stuff, because especially like categories like fashion, FMCG, it is more of an emotional purchase than it is for electronics. Reason is electronics is mainly price based, correct? And that's what we were really famous for before, or like really established ourselves around that. So their conversion based marketing was helpful because you show the right product at the cheapest price, people buy. But when people are buying their groceries or people are buying fashion, it is a bigger part of their decision making every day. So you're trying to move people away from their traditional brick and mortar shopping and all that kind of stuff. So really looking at how do we really double down on building those subcategory brands,
and that emotional connection.
And that is what we're really looking at investing for next year. And then what is the message? What is the creative content around that?
Yeah, because indeed with Heineken, from one campaign we create about over 1,000 assets, but it is indeed, what is sent to you is different what is appealing to you. So there is a different spin depending on who you are, where you are, when it is served. So it's like the old 5 hours. But it can be totally individualized what you get.
How do you guys individualize it?
We make like it is like really flexible assets. So and now we have still got the cookie, of course. You can still use cookies now, but we cannot anymore. But so we say, okay, what is our target audience? Okay, you start with a broad one, and then you have all different who's, where, when's, and why's. Because, for example, the COVID campaign that you see, there's different people in different parts of the world experiencing different things. And so you have different scenes in a commercial, but you can replace the opening shot. You can replace the
It's always, I mean, because I guess your sales channel, you're not particularly a direct to consumer company, and you always need a third party to. So do you look at really more on building the brand and building, let's say, top of mind awareness versus a conversion, correct?
No, it's both. So we have indeed awareness. You have assets that really have to create meaningfulness or differentiation. So how does it make people feel? We also have conversion assets. So if you
invest with, let's say, your sales channel partner.
Yes, fully. And we have indeed EB2B, EB2C. We do have some own online sales channels in other markets. Look at Singapore, Malaysia. But we know from some people, or from people, when are they going to shop, or are they browsing? Can we then indeed serve them? Oh, organizing party. Okay. Serve them a thing. So you just do keyword and then you target them with the specific assets. But you do have to then be flexible, and you do need to monitor that very closely. What is served to
whom? Yeah, there's a responsibility.
It's the same like what you said. If I look at a cat video, then the next 2 weeks I get bombarded by cat videos.
Yes, forever. You're forever a cat lover.
And I'm not.
For the record. Let's talk about premiumization.
Yes.
I worked in beer communications for a long time in sub-Saharan Africa. And one of the things that I remember most is how premium and how sort of elevated an experience it was to hold a Heineken, particularly for men. But holding an international beer brand was really about status, so talking about emotional connection and connecting with brands in different ways. So it was about how I look holding the bottle as well as the taste. How much is that true today in Asia and specifically Sri Lanka? Has that shifted, or is that visual appeal still as important here?
Well, it is important to look at where your market is at and what people want from premium. We discussed that a bit at the beginning of the conversation. What is premium differs per market development. So if you are in a market that is quite underdeveloped, like a can of soda is very premium because you know it is safe and it is packed under hygienic circumstances. Then if you develop a bit more, it is about show. Look at me, I can afford this. And I saw that indeed in Africa when I was working there, in the northern part of South America. Then even if I had my empty case of Heineken bottles, the guy who would come and guard my house would say, can I have your case? Because then I put it in front of my front porch and people think that I have purchased that Heineken. So status show. Then it moves to experience. So a market like Malaysia, for example, is very much developed. Yes, okay, the basic standards are always there. Show off, yeah, okay, we can afford it, but then it is like, how can I interact with a brand? Then if you move even further down, markets like Korea, markets like New Zealand, it is about how does the brand make me feel? And if you then talk about Gen Zs, it is about what does the brand do for a better world? So you have to know where your market is at. Sri Lanka is in that sense, in some elements, it is an experience market because here in where we are, in Colombo, people have seen it all, traveled the world, etc. In other parts, maybe it is about, hey, is it safe to drink? And then in some parts of the country, it is about, hey, look, I can afford it. So I think Sri Lanka is a bit between show off and okay, your events, people love to go out and dance and experience. That is where premium is. So as a brand, you need to make sure that you have all the other elements in queue. Because if you say, okay, I'm very purposeful, but in the end, my product is not of high quality, then you also have a problem. So you have to move through the spectrum, maintain the other elements of the spectrum, make sure you serve to consumer and deliver and interact with it in the way that they need. And premiumization is the global trend.
Across beer?
Across beer, across many products. I think what we saw in COVID in the beginning, people were a bit scared and then said, yeah, you know what, I'm rewarding myself, so I buy better. And whether it was ice cream or whether it was beer, the little rewards. Also here you see it now, say, okay, I might not be able to buy that new car or travel overseas at the moment, but I am going to buy myself some good things. So premiumization, and that goes hand in hand with the global trend of also moderation. People are not globally looking to, drink 60 beers with their group of 10 friends. No, they say, let's have a couple, but the next day I have to work, or tomorrow morning I want to exercise. So drink better is very much a global trend. And people also love to explore new things and say, oh, I've discovered something, you should try this. And that is also what you see. So different choices, making them available depending on where you are, who you are with. Your needs in a different occasion can change. If you're on the beach with friends, you might want to have an easy drinking beer, but if you're hosting a dinner party at your home, you might want to have something else. So that as a company you have to tailor for, and then indeed be consumer obsessive. What do they want? What do they need? And make sure you have it. Otherwise, yeah, the competitor
The
goes.
competitor will.
Yes.
But talking of trends and health and wellness, you've relatively recently launched 0% alcohol beer again. I remember you tried once before, perhaps in the 80s, right? I think it didn't work out so well back then. But today, there is a huge demand for alcohol-free alcoholic brands.
Yeah.
Previously only alcoholic brands, right?
Yeah.
Tapping into some of those health trends, tapping into, I remember one of your pieces of communication that says now you can cheers when you don't have alcohol in your hand. There's a whole campaign around that. So how has that shifted, and how does that tap on that diversity that we were talking about earlier, including different people in the brand that perhaps don't want to have alcohol but do want to be part of the Heineken brand?
Yeah, so indeed you were referring to the 80s in the Netherlands, where we had a brand that was 0-0, but in the basics what it was not tasting nice. So Heineken spent years and years and years to crack brewing a perfect beer, then de-alcoholizing it into a 0-0 that tastes just like a beer. Because going back to experiences, it has to taste good. So this Heineken 0-0 launched in 2017 and it is a fly. The idea was you need to always have a choice. When I go out, I know if I will or won't drink alcohol. What happens if you say, okay, I can't or I won't drink alcohol? What was the alternative? Yeah, a juice or a carbonated soft drink doesn't make you feel very included in the group part, and then you think, okay, at some point I might as well go home. Here now you can hold that drink, feel like you're rewarding yourself, you're part of the conversation. So the idea is very much always give people a choice. And then we said, so now you can have a beer. And then the mission was very much to make moderation cool. Because what happened in the beginning is that people said, okay, can you pour it in a glass for me? And then if people don't know that I don't drink.
Yeah.
That still does happen a little with pregnant women, for example, who don't want to say yet that they're pregnant. But so the advertising and the campaign and how you unlock that coolness was very much what we did. So the advertising indeed was around never drink and drive, when you want to be active, okay, and using those insights and then making a humorous twist around it. That very much broke the mold for acceptance of that category, and then within 2-3 years it became 10% of the beer category. It's
10%.
massive. And also here, I get so many requests of people who have been abroad and saying, when can we have the Heineken 0-0? So I would love to bring it. Yeah.
Would you look at using those kind of products to penetrate into markets like Saudi Arabia, like anywhere?
Yeah, what we say with 0-0, we stick to our marketing code. So Heineken 0-0 is still from the Heineken brand. So never targeted kids. But if also for religious reasons you cannot drink, we would never target people that normally would not buy Heineken. Where it works is for people that like beer, but for some moments can. And that is for Heineken 0-0. But there are also, like if people don't like beer and they like a wine or a cocktail, something sweeter. So for those people, you also have something then in a 0-0 variant. And it's always have a choice. Feel free to participate in the moment. Reward yourself with something better, because also, again, on this 0-0, it is very low carb, no sugar, so it is also a bit better for you.
So on the diversity discussion, before we sort of bring this to a close, do you think, Rakhil, that this conversation generally for brands around being more inclusive to different consumer types, to perhaps taking a category that was previously one thing into another, is changing and is shifting? And do you think the last 2 years has made a significant impact, whether that's women or different types of consumers? Inclusion, diversity, is it changing here in Sri Lanka?
Oh, definitely. But I think for us as an industry, we're a relatively new industry. In a global sense, new, in a Sri Lankan sense, incredibly new. Correct? So I think we're also lucky to enter into a market where diversity is not as big a problem, because e-commerce is a pretty, equalizing the industry, correct? I think if anything, a lot of sort of the people who were excluded find it easier to participate in the e-commerce industry because of sort of the just simply being able to do things on your phone or at home and stuff like that. As far as targeting consumers, I mean, but I think as an employer, I think Sri Lanka still needs to do far more when it comes to being inclusive for women. And Daraz itself is something that we're taking a big priority, really driving and making far more equal balance between sort of genders, especially in the organization. Historically, it's been a very male-heavy organization, and now we're really actively pushing to promote more balance in that area.
But your platform also creates a huge amount of empowerment because e-commerce is a very equalising platform, because now female sellers in your
and also sort of equality, not just among sort of race or gender, it's also about among sort of socio-economic, correct? You don't need to be a deep-pocketed brand to sell to a Columbus 7 customer anymore. You just have to be a small entrepreneur sitting somewhere, and as long as your product is good, you can reach those customers. You don't need to have a shop in Gulf S1 anymore. So I think in that sense, we also find it incredibly empowering platform.
Absolutely. So let's close just back talking about Sri Lanka and talking about empowerment. The fact that the Heineken company is here on what is a relatively small island, comparatively, right? 22 million people. What brought Heineken here? Why did they come and manufacture beer in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, because we see an opportunity, and you can think like only 22 million people. If you think of Singapore, it's 5 million, New Zealand is 4.5 million, then we are there proud and present. And what we do globally is really brew that joy of true togetherness, but exciting and shaping the future of beer and beyond. And we spoke about beer, we spoke also about other categories. And if you look at Sri Lanka, it is still such a strong beer spirits-driven market, but people are digitized, people are young. There is a certain degree of urbanization. If you look at other markets in APEC where that happened, and rapidly, if you innovate, if you premiumize, there is a space to operate. So we said, hey, let's go, but let's do different. Let's change the game of beer in this market. Go with Heineken, go with Tiger, Asia's biggest beer brand, and then innovate from there. And it will eventually trickle down. And I think with the help of, now if the government is willing, like stimulating innovation, stimulating digitization. I think we are the biggest advocates. Let's stimulate that change and give consumers a choice on where to buy, what to buy.
Do you think they'll change the laws on like marketing and stuff like that, allowing you to?
Maybe not on alcohol advertising, but I think just if you look at places where you can buy, and that is on and offline, licensed outlets, making legally brewed alcoholic beverages more wider accessible also stops people to go and purchase at their neighbor who has a kettle in the backyard and making illicit alcohol. So that means increased revenue for the government if you get that access to illicit alcohol available, and then see, okay, if other markets can do online sales in a way that is very targeted, very controlled, and that is what you can do, like no other, then also there is a new revenue stream. And then you can do E, B, to B, to C. So there are opportunities for growth. And Heineken believes, there is a consumer out there that is waiting for that change. Let them be with us.
Thank you both very much for being here. I think my main takeaway from this, although there has been huge value in this conversation, is how there are two businesses at this table right now that see the opportunity for the island, for Sri Lanka, for that empowerment, for that change, for that story that's yet to be built. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing that. The podcast is here to literally unbox the change that could be out there in the future, and I think we've had plenty of that today. So Maud, Rakhil, thank you very much for joining Unboxing What Matters, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Unboxing What Matters. Subscribe and follow us on social media to stay on top of all that's to come in the season ahead.